The geography of the swarm, asymmetric naval warfare, and the environmental determinism of narrow seas. Chapter 3, Asymmetric War, the Advantage of the Small. Act 3, The Synthesis. 2,000 years before the invention of the internal combustion engine, the phased array radar, or the anti-ship cruise missile, the Roman Republic faced an existential threat that perfectly mirrored the modern crisis in the Strait of Hormuz. By the 1st century before the Common Era, Rome was the undisputed, dominant land power of the Mediterranean world, having crushed Carthage and subdued the Hellenistic kingdoms. Yet, despite its heavy, centralized military might and legendary infantry, Rome found itself completely paralyzed by an asymmetric, decentralized naval threat, the Cilician and Illyrian pirates. To understand how a collection of loosely affiliated maritime raiders could threaten to starve the greatest superpower of antiquity, we must again examine the ultimate geographic causes that empowered them. The ancient pirates operated primarily from two highly specific geographic strongholds: the Dalmatian coast of the Adriatic Sea and the southern coast of Asia Minor, known in antiquity as Cilicia Trachea or rugged Cilicia. A geological survey of these coastlines reveals striking, almost identical similarities to the modern Musandam Peninsula. The Dalmatian coast is heavily indented, featuring pronounced karstification, deep fjords, and an intricate, confusing archipelago of over 1,300 small islands. Similarly, the coastline of rugged Cilicia is a chaotic maze of steep crags, hidden coves, and easily defensible natural harbors, anchored by the massive rock fortress of Carasium. Just as the radar clutter and fortified islands of the Persian Gulf protect modern fast boats, the jagged terrain of Dalmatia and Cilicia provided the ancient pirates with perfect natural camouflage. The environment allowed them to hide their fleets, launch devastating ambushes into the narrow shipping lanes, and retreat into shallow, rocky waters where the deep-draft, heavy Roman warships dared not follow. The primary instrument of this ancient asymmetric warfare was the Liburnian galley. Originally developed by the Illyrian tribes of the Adriatic, the Liburnian was a light, fast, and highly maneuverable vessel designed specifically for coastal raiding. While the Roman navy relied on massive, heavy triremes and quinquiremes designed for slow, set-piece battles and infantry boarding actions, the pirates utilized the Liburnian, which featured a shallow draft and initially a single bank of 25 oars per side, later evolving into a bireme configuration. Under sail, the Liburnian could achieve remarkable speeds of up to 14 knots, and it could outmaneuver the sluggish Roman behemoths with ease. The pirates deployed these vessels not as single combatants, but as a coordinated swarm. By attacking in groups, sometimes lashing 4 ships together to assault larger Greek and Roman vessels, the light galleys could saturate the defenses of a merchant ship, overwhelming the crew through speed and numbers before melting back into the treacherous coastal geography. The economic asymmetry of this ancient conflict was as profound as the modern cost-exchange ratio between a $2 billion destroyer and a $1,000 drone. The Roman Republic relied heavily on the long-distance maritime transport of goods, particularly the massive shipments of grain required to feed the exploding urban population of Rome. The pirates recognized that they did not need to defeat the Roman legions in open land combat. They only needed to exploit the vulnerability of the maritime choke points. By swarming the slow, ungainly grain ships, the Cilician pirates effectively choked off the lifeblood of the empire. The economic impact was devastating. The price of wheat in Rome skyrocketed to unprecedented levels, causing widespread famine, disrupting the financial markets, and inciting violent riots among the starving citizens in the Forum. The pirates, thriving in the power vacuum left by the collapse of the Seleucid Empire and the decline of Ptolemaic Egypt, grew increasingly emboldened by their environmental advantage, escalating their operations from mere robbery to systemic, state-level terror. They routinely captured and held for ransom high-ranking Roman officials, including two praetors, Sextilius and Bellinus, the daughter of the triumphant Antonius, and most famously, a young Julius Caesar. They plundered at least 14 major sacred sanctuaries across the Mediterranean, displaying an utter disregard for Roman supremacy. According to Plutarch, they sacked the temples at Claros, Didyma, and Samothrace, the temple of Chthonian earth at Hermione, the temple of Asclepius in Epidaurus, the sanctuaries of Poseidon at the Isthmus, Taenarum, and Caloria, the temples of Apollo at Actium and Leucas, and the temples of Hera at Samos, Argos, and Lacinium. The historian Appian of Alexandria recounted that the pirates amassed a staggering fleet of over 1,000 ships, captured 400 towns, and acted not as mere thieves, but as a highly coordinated, rival maritime state boasting gilded sails and purple awnings. The blue water hegemony of Rome was entirely neutralized by the brown water swarm. Driven to the brink of total societal collapse by this systemic disruption, the Roman populace demanded extreme, unprecedented measures. In the year 67, before the Common Era, the tribune Aulus Gabinius proposed a radical piece of legislation known as the Lex Gabinia. This law granted the general Pompey the Great sweeping, dictatorial powers to eradicate the pirate menace. Pompey was given proconsular authority over the entire Mediterranean Sea and all coastal lands up to 50 miles inland, effectively overriding the power of all local governors and breaking the traditional limits of republican power. To fund this massive undertaking, the Roman treasury was forced to hemorrhage capital, granting Pompey the staggering sum of 144 million sesterces, alongside an armada of 500 warships and an army of 120,000 infantry and 5,000 cavalry. Pompey's campaign was a logistical masterpiece that finally recognized the geographic nature of the threat. He understood that the swarm could not be defeated by chasing individual Liburnian galleys through the jagged islands. Instead, he utilized his massive resources to divide the Mediterranean into 13 distinct zones, assigning a legate to command each sector. By simultaneously sweeping the seas from west to east, Pompey flushed the pirates out of their natural hiding places and drove them back to their primary stronghold at the fortress of Carasium on the craggy Cilician coast. There, through a decisive naval victory and subsequent blockade, he forced their total surrender in a mere 89 days, eventually resettling the survivors in depopulated cities like Soli, which was renamed Pompeiopolis. Yet, while Pompey's campaign is rightfully celebrated as a triumph of Roman military organization, a deeper environmental analysis reveals a much darker systemic truth. The Roman victory required the suspension of their constitutional republic, the granting of dangerous dictatorial powers to a single man, a precedent that paved the way for the fall of the republic and the rise of the emperors, and the expenditure of a massive portion of the state treasury. The pirates, utilizing cheap wood, simple sails, and an intimate knowledge of the rocky coastline, forced the wealthiest, most powerful empire on earth to bankrupt itself structurally and financially just to maintain basic commercial transit. This is the ultimate, inescapable lesson of the narrow seas. The sting of the wasp is a permanent, enduring feature of maritime choke points, deeply encoded into the geography of the earth. Whether it is a fleet of wooden Liburnians hiding in the caustic coves of the Adriatic, or a modern swarm of fiberglass patrol boats and loitering munitions utilizing the radar clutter of the Musandam Peninsula, the underlying mechanics remain identical. Geography dictates that narrow, jagged coastlines will always foster asymmetric warfare. The local inhabitants will inevitably evolve decentralized, low-cost swarm tactics that flawlessly exploit the physical, cognitive, and economic limitations of large, centralized naval powers. Great hegemonies built on the premise of open ocean dominance and massive capital investment, will repeatedly find their treasuries drained, their technology nullified, and their political structures stressed to the breaking point when they attempt to impose order on these complex littoral environments. As the history of the Mediterranean and the geography of the Persian Gulf irrevocably prove, the environment always favors the local swarm, ensuring that the heavy toll of asymmetric warfare will continue to exact its ultimate price upon empires for millennia to come.